Look, I'm incredibly grateful for this. It's enormously kind. And it's a good opportunity for me to think back on the role that so many in this room played in the development of this religious environmental movement. Now, I confess to being a little, I'm just Sunday school teacher, so to stand up in front of all these clerics and things is a little difficult. But Jim and I had practice. We were in Halki, in the island of Halki, last year, I guess. We're in a room about this size. We got to address very directly Patriarch Bartholomew, whose wonderful title is Your All Holiness. And once you've addressed Your All Holiness, everything else is okay. I can remember when there wasn't really much of a religious environmental movement. I remember when there were people like Cal DeWitt, and Sally Bingham was just starting things up, and I'm so glad that Reb Trosser brought up the name of Steve Shaw at JTS, because I remember so well some of those early occasions. The one I remember best was this hike that Steve organized with a bunch of rabbis along the Appalachian Trail, and we hiked up I know how far it was because somebody forgot their talit, and I had to hike back to the parking lot and back to get it at the same time. But the great moment was we were sitting in having lunch, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was no wind or anything else, this huge branch snapped and fell about 15 feet away, and it made a huge noise. And all of a sudden, there were about 15 people doing 15 different brachas there, for when your life has been spared, for when some interesting, thing is happening. It was really great. And a reminder always of how close, how important, how at the forefront our traditions should be in this fight. I want to say three things that I think are important, or maybe not important, but they're just on my mind. And let me say in advance that when you accuse someone of having prophetic vision, as I was accused here, you have to watch out a little bit, because when the prophets, my sense from reading the Bible is when the prophets came, they were generally a pain in the butt, and the people that they were generally a pain in the butt to were the faith community that they came to. Not to the rest of the world so much. They were prophesying to their community, and what they were generally saying is, you need to do better. So forgive me in advance. First thing is, we desperately need a sense of the science to understand that, to answer the question, and it's the key question, how quickly do we need to move and on what scale? Because there are a whole bunch of solutions to this problem that are appropriate if we have a long time in which to act, and which are inappropriate or imaginary if we have to move very quickly. So Jim has done more than anybody on this earth to help provide us with that context. Okay, he didn't tell the whole story. I just learned it. This is very good news, and it comes as some kind of good omen. Jim said that he's going to work at Columbia, setting him up with a lab now that he's retired from NASA. But he didn't say where the lab's going to be. Those of you who know New York, he's going to go to work in the God Box up there across from Riverside Church. And there couldn't be a more appropriate place for that lab to be. And it's terrific. Well, the message is, and Jim, you correct me if I'm wrong in any way, the message is we have almost no time in which to get things done on an almost enormous scale. This is the biggest transition that human beings have ever talked about, and it can only therefore happen not simply through individual acts or congregational acts of change, though those are very important, But it also has to happen through an engagement with the structures of this problem. If we are engaged in a condition of sin, and I think that the patriarch was exactly right to put it that way, then it is above all a structural sin that we are enmeshed in at this point. And if we're not willing to challenge those structures forthrightly, then the rest is, well, it's all happy and good, but it's not going to get us where we need to go. Second thing, that involves a certain amount of conflict. And in my tradition, in the Christian tradition, conflict is part of this story. One is reminded that when Jesus got to the temple, the first thing he was interested in doing was turning over the table of the money changers and in no uncertain terms telling people what needed to happen. That's why it's so good right now around the country to see people able to name who one of the enemies in this story is. The fossil fuel industry that has kept our political system in its thrall and that has in its reserves 5 times the amount of carbon that even the most conservative government or scientists say we could safely burn. And so, in our time, those are the powers and principalities. And we need to take them on if we're serious about this, which is why it is very good news that congregations around this country and around this world are beginning to follow the lead of young people and divest their holdings in those companies. I heard just yesterday that the big UU church in Salt Lake City took a unanimous vote to divest. It didn't surprise me because that's the home church of one of our heroes, Tim DeChristopher, just out of 2 years in federal prison for his creative witness and on his way to Harvard Divinity School in the fall. Okay, but it was very good news, and it's very good news that the Unitarians and the UCC will be voting on this denominationally in the course of the summer. Very good news that the Uniting Church of Australia, the biggest denomination there, voted last week to divest their holdings. Where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And if ours is bound up in Exxon and wherever else, then there's very little chance that we're going to do things on the scale that we need to do them. The third thing I'd like to say is this fight's going to get harder before it gets easier, and it's going to require a real willingness to commit on deep levels. People are starting to go to jail, which is a very good thing. The most important technology of the last century was not the technology of nuclear power or the internet or radio or anything else. The most interesting technology that people worked on in the 20th century was this technology of nonviolence, of its ability to change institutions and people. We haven't done as much work on it as we should. We have colleges in every country devoted to studying the military method, but very little. I mean, we do by sort of practice, we try to figure out how we can make nonviolence work. This is a technology that came out of communities of faith. It came out of Gandhi in India, reading the Gita as well as the scriptures. But the greatest exponent probably of it in that fight was not Gandhi himself. It was his great colleague Ghaffar Abdul Khan, the frontier Gandhi, there in that difficult part of the world on the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, who mobilized a nonviolent army so brave and powerful that they, as Gandhi said, did more than anybody else to face down the British. In this country, of course, it was people of faith who were at the forefront beginning, but by no means limited to Dr. King, in figuring out how to make this work. And now we've got to make it work on a global basis and fast, because Really, there are very few other things that are going to put enough sand in the gears of this onrushing machine to give us some chance of slowing it down. The only reason, though people have worked very hard from a lot of different directions and will continue to, the only reason we're even having a discussion about the Keystone Pipeline in this country is because 1,200 and some people went to jail to try and slow it down and open up room for lots of others to advance lots of other arguments and make lots of other cases. Now there are people that I think shouldn't have to go to jail all the time, and Laura's right. I'm not sure that young people should have to go to jail all the time to do this, though they've been leaders, because if you're 22 right now, maybe an arrest record is not the absolute best thing for your resume. One of the few unmixed blessings of growing older is that past a certain point, what the hell are they going to do to you, you know? One of the other people who I think shouldn't have to go to jail all the time, frankly, is Jim Hansen. Though he's done it a number of times, it pains me every time I see him in handcuffs, and we're often in the same place, because I sit there thinking, this makes no sense. Here is our finest climate scientist, whose great work is back in his lab, understanding and explaining to the rest of us what is going on. Without him, no climate movement, because we don't understand what's happening. Without him, no 350.org, because that's where the number came from. And it's crazy, frankly, that he has to go off to jail all the time, though I'm happy that he's willing to do it. We need, the next time that the call comes out, we need a lot more callers in jail than we had last time. We need a lot more people in Tali. We need a lot of people trying to figure out what direction Mecca is so they can do their prayers at the right time from the jail cell. We need a lot of people who are willing to rise to this kind of challenge, because we don't have very much time to get this done. And this is what witness is now. If we had all the time in the world, then the easy way and the right way would be the slow educational and cultural transformations, one person at a time, one parish at a time, one community at a time, as we learn to green those places. And all of that is work that we should and must be doing, but it can't be at the exclusion of taking on these systems in the most dramatic way, because it is these systems that are overrunning us now. And I think that there are great reasons to at least hope a little bit. I was very moved to watch the new Pope take the name of Francis. Very moved to watch him as he did to welcome for the first time the Patriarch of the Orthodox Church there as an equal in Rome at that ceremony, and to see that bridge begin to be healed. And one of the places where it begins to be healed is in this understanding that we have an earth, the whole earth, to watch out for. The forces on the other side are extremely powerful. They have more money than any industry in the history of the planet. So we need to figure out these other currencies to work in, and happily they're the currencies that the people in this room are good at working in. Passion and spirit and creativity, and a willingness by their unearned suffering to demonstrate to other people the time has come to take action. So I confess, partly because I've spent so much time with Jim, that it's impossible for me to guarantee that we're going to win this fight. The momentum of change on this planet is now very strong. The fact that the Arctic melted last summer should be a daunting signal to all of us. We took one of the largest physical features on this planet and we broke it. and the other ones are following in close measure. But one of the good things about being people of faith is that we're not completely consigned to a scientific analysis only. We're allowed, I think, to hope that if we do everything that we can possibly do, that there are forces in this world and outside this world that will meet us halfway. But only if we do. That hope is cheap hope unless it comes from people who are doing absolutely everything that they can be doing to make this happen. So I can't promise you that we'll win, only promise you that it is an enormous, enormous honor to get to be side by side with all of you in this fight. And I will look forward to it in the rooms where we're talking about divestment, and I will look forward to it in the rooms where we're talking about science, and I'll look forward to it in jail cells as well in the time ahead. Thank you all very much.